Welcome to the Stoa. I'm so excited to be with you all today. I'll tell you a little bit about why I felt inspired to host this session. At the same time as I started participating at the Stoa, I started participating in weavings with Alejo. And some of the ideas that were being shared were just so harmonious that it was really causing a lot of mind bending for me in a really beautiful way. And at that moment, I knew that I wanted to bring the communities together at some point. And so 2 years later, here we are. I'm coming representing the Imago community, which is an animistic community that offers transformational experiences, such as retreats and weavings like this. And we have a sister altar of Allyu Tiqsi Muyu in Colombia, which Alejo and Peter are representing, and many more people here listening, and also the Stoa. So I'm really just excited to see what happens. So I'll introduce Alejo. Alejo is one of my teachers who has spent a lot of time sitting with elders of various traditions, and especially the Andean Cosmovision. So I want to turn it over to Alejo, send you the word, give you the word in just a moment. And I'd love for you to share a little bit about how you came into being who you are. Maybe talk about some of the experiences that led you down this path of learning. Oh, and one important thing, this session is offered in various languages. So at the bottom of your screen, and I guess we'll need to translate this. So let me just think a moment. This is the first time we've done this. So at the bottom of your screen, you'll see where it says share screen, record, reactions. There should be a button that where you get to choose a language between reactions and whiteboards. So if you want to listen in English, you can click English. If you want to listen in Spanish, you can click Spanish. Okay, so we're going to continue. And so the translators, please begin. So the question that I wanted to pose to Alejo, the question that I'm posing is that I want to ask how he got to be the person that he is, how he started on this path of learning the stories, the songs, and the dances that are healing to our culture.
Well, first, to say hello and to give thanks that these families are being woven, these thoughts and prayers are being woven. This is an essential part of being able to share this thought of this work, that we're able to integrate the diversity, that we are able to integrate the differences and find the points in common that makes us stronger. So a lot of gratitude for this happening, for this possibility continues to be gestated for everybody, and that we can build ourselves as new people, better woven. So first, to give thanks for this. So in the question, for me, it's hard to define like a point where it started. Having to do so, I would situate it before I was born, thanks to my family, my mother, my father, and their decisions and their paths. But more punctually, I start to go into this path thanks to my mother. When I was around 5 years old, 4 years, something like this, she did her thesis of the university in relation with the grandfathers in indigenous people. And in this relation, is that my path started meeting these elders that gave him this indication to accompany me in this process. Your child has to walk this. So when I was around 7 years old, I started to drink yahe, ayahuasca. So from that age, I was drinking with a specific nation, the Ziona nation of Putumayo. I grew up with them. And when I was in my adolescence, I also met other elders. After that, when the grandfather with whom I had drank all my childhood, when he passed away in the year 2007, the Taita Francisco Piaguaje Taita Pacho died. When he dies, something changed in my relation with ayahuasca. I would drink jahe and the jahe would not show me the same. I had some time before that where even though I was drinking the medicine, many of my processes, mainly something that I grew up with, was with the word liberty. And that process of searching for liberty, where my mother would allow me to be free from always, even being a child, she would allow me to do anything. So, in that search for liberty, it became very deep. And so, there was a time where that search became and politics, it took me to the streets, it took me to drugs. I was about 3 years from since I was 14 to about 17 years. I was between drinking yahe a weekend and the next weekend going to the streets to live the streets with all its darkness, with all that implicates. But after the death of the elder, something started to change in that relation, and the grandfather he left jahe with a cousin of mine before he died, where he said, "This jahe is for you to drink, just my cousin and myself." When I drank that jahe, it was very deep what it spoke. That jahe took me to the mountain because in my path until there it had been in the jungle. So that jahe took me to the mountain and told me that I was from the mountain. I had to find what was there. So when I was 17, I met Huachuma, San Pedro, and the sacred cactus of the Andes. I met with the coca leaf. I met with tobacco and their relations. These three main plants, although I met many others as well, mushrooms, jopo, different tools of knowledge. But it was punctually the Wachuma in that point of my life who took me in, who was like a grandfather to me. Eh, And when Wachuma took me in, everything started uh, to be ordered to go to the Andean world, to the world of my territory, where I live here in the Andes, the north part of the Andes, where the mountain range becomes three mountain ranges, which are the three mountain ranges in Colombia, a very powerful energetic node. So there I met with a grandfather, the grandfather Muruya Winaima. The grandfather Furuya, he he finds me, or we found each other, and everything turned, and they started a conscious process, a focus. I was around 19 years old at that moment, maybe 20, and there everything turned into recovering the memory of ourselves and the work of the Alliance of the Nations, an alliance that started in 1975. When that alliance advances and finds one of its priorities to recover the memory of the nations that had lost their own story. So the grandfather, he took us in with that word, and there the grandfather started to send me to meet with other elders, to go to the Andes, to do pilgrimages, to go to the temples, to study the medicine more deeply. Before that process, there was a process of about 2 years or 1 year and 10 months of diet where where we we isolated ourselves in the mountain, and that year and 10 months we lived in diet permanently. I thought that my life would be like that, that I was meant to be living like a hermit, living in the mountain without contact with the world. because during that time, we didn't use cell phones or technology. We didn't even use money. Everything was through exchanges, through trade, and through almost 2 years of diet. Was that my grandfather, he started to send me to go around the Andes, to go to the temples, all this process. And all that process has been construction, which has been building our path of the community, my own path, understanding ourselves as part of that alliance, understanding ourselves as part of this prophecy, understanding ourselves as part of this work, and at no moment going into a game of power or of postures. We didn't, I don't walk this under a figure of I being a great priest or shaman or something of this sort. We are working a construction of nation, of family, of accompanying and supporting each other. What we have done is to give our lives. And so, in this way, and around 6 years ago, we were able to get our own mountain. We were able to buy some land for ourselves. And 6 years until now, since we have had the land, everything has changed a lot. That has been to root and to lift our temple, the mother house. In Quechua, it's called Yachakwasi. In the common, it's called Maloca. It's the temple, the brain of a nation, where it is kept all that information and from where the territory is ordered. So it has been curious because in these 6 years of making roots, it has also been the 6 years where the need of this work has opened us to travel through the world, not only to go through the Andes, as it was in the first years of our work, but to travel around the world, all South America, part of Central America, Europe, Israel, well, different places, movements, and flows from that route, which has become our path. So I feel that my path is the mountain, and the advance in the mountain is the essence of what I could call my path. My path is the mountain, and I feel being the path of the mountain as well. Working for her, allowing you for it to move because she is there well seated in her home. So I open myself to allow her to move. So that's why I move around the world, and it has been given to me in this manner. Being very young, the elders allowed me this opportunity. Since I am 18 years old, I started to make ceremonies, I started to share the medicine, not as a personal decision, but as a calling of these forces, of these elders, physical and energetic. So it has been a bit of that to understand, to walk the medicine, and to understand the medicine is not just plants or substances, they are really a whole cosmovision, a whole understanding of the world and the universe. And that to be able to walk coherently with a plant, it is not about just to walk the substance or its visionary effect, but to really walk the cosmovision that they have built along literally thousands and thousands of years. So all this path of walking the plants has built this work. To the son of today puts us in this necessity of weaving ourselves in diversity to meet with all the family. So that to make a small summary to answer how this path starts and how it is all woven so that we could come to be here today.
Thank you, Alejo. One of the things that we brought, Mihala, could you interpret for me? Okay, thank you. One of the stories that inspired this meeting was the story of the Condor Eagle Prophecy. I'm wondering if you could tell that story so that everyone here is in the knowing of it.
Esa es una profecía que se
That is a
entreteje con
prophecy that's interwoven with other prophecies.
acá.
Here,
Digamos, una primera profecía
there was a
donde
first
los
prophecy that was born, well, two,
nacen
that
desde
were
los
born
pueblos
from
amazónicos,
the nations of the Amazon, especially the
los
Murui
pueblos de la Sierra Nevada de Santa
and the people of the
donde
snowy
se
mountain of Santa
profetizaba
Marta,
que
where
la
these
llegada de
prophecies
ese
spoke
tiempo,
of the arrival of this
en ese
time. And
tiempo
they said that
llegaba
with this
esta
time there would
dimensión
arrive this
un
dimension,
monstruo gigante,
a giant
y
monster.
recordaban que de tiempo
They
en tiempo
remembered that from
aparecían
time to
monstruos en
time
la tierra
there would appear
y
monsters on this earth,
minando
and they would
la
start to
legalidad
mine the
para
possibility
manifestar la
of
ley
manifesting the
de esta
law of
dimensión.
origin in this dimension.
Pero se decía que el monstruo de
So
ese
it was
tiempo
said that this
era
monster of this time was a
tomaba la
monster
fuerza de
that
todos
would
los
take the
antepasados.
strength of all the ones
Este
before it.
monstruo los viejos lo
That
llamaban
this monster, the elder would call, or they call it, the monster of consumerism.
Entonces, en esa profecía
So in that prophecy,
se dice que para poder
it is
mitigar
said that to be able to mitigate
ese,
that
ese monstruo, todo
that
ese
monster,
efecto que él tenía
all
sobre
that
la tierra,
effect that it had over
es
the earth,
necesaria una
it
alianza
would be
de todas las
necessary an
naciones
alliance of all the
capaces de
nations
recordar
able to
a
remember
todas las
their
naciones
memory,
vivas y
all of the live
sus
nations,
huérfanas,
those that are
su
not
propia historia de
orphans,
origen.
but that they have their own
Sin
story.
embargo, esa profecía
However,
también en un
that
momento
prophecy at one
se
point,
considera una parte
the
esencial
elders found an essential
que
part of
decía
it that said
aunque todas las
that
naciones
even if all the nations with
se
memory
aliaran,
would
no
ally
sería
themselves,
suficiente,
it would not be enough,
que era necesario
that it was
que todas las
necessary
naciones que
for all the
olvidaron su
nations
historia
that kept their own story to remember,
recuerden
that forgot their own
la
story to
tradición
remember, that all the
y de
orphans
esa
of the
forma
tradition
también
would recover their
de
memory.
ahí
And from there,
unirse con todos los
ally
pueblos
themselves with
para
all the
lograr
people to be able
una
to really
aceptación
make
contundente,
a
clara,
impacting action
frente a ese monstruo.
in in
Ese
front of
monstruo
that
es
monster.
una palabra,
In that, there was a
una
word,
profecía, digamos,
there was a prophecy,
que
to
hablaba
say it in a way,
de
that
unos
spoke of some
espíritus que
elders,
vendrían
some
a venir a
spirits
ayudar en ese
that
proceso.
would come to help with that
Dice
process.
que hablaba primero
So it
que
was
ese
spoken
año
first
va a salir
that there would come
el abuelo
Unasi,
que sale a limpiar
the
y abrir el camino.
grandfather that would come out to
Una de sus
clean and
profecías
open the paths. One of them is ayahuasca, Yahe.
ya con saber eso,
So,
ellos
with
sabían
knowing
que
this,
esos
they knew
elders de la
that
profecía
all those
eran
elders of the prophecy were
medicinas que
plants,
venían a ayudar en
medicines
ese
that
proceso
would come to help with that
y se
process.
sabían que
And they
después
knew
de
that
Unasi venía un
after
elder que
Unasi,
se llama
there would
Unama.
come an elder called Unamara.
Los viejos de la
Unamara,
Amazonia no
the
sabían
elders
quién
of
era,
the Amazon, did not know who it
ellos
was.
sabían sus cualidades,
They knew of their
no sabían
qualities, but they did
las
not know
cualidades
who
de
it was.
Unama.
The qualities
Decían
of
que son
Unamara
las
says that
estrellas,
it is the grandfather of the
trabaja con la
stars
visión
that comes
de
down to this
estrellas,
dimension to awaken people.
trabaja con la
It comes
intención
down with
de que la
the
gente
intention
despierte la
of
gana
people awakening
de
the
estudiar,
will to
valga la
awaken.
redundancia, ¿no? Que se
Forgive me
despierte
for the
la
redundancy,
voluntad
to
de querer
awaken
estudiar,
to the
de querer
will to
recordar,
want to do
de querer
something, to
recuperar.
want to remember, to
Cuando
want to
ellos
recover the memory.
salen
So
del
when
Amazonas, me
they
refiero,
leave the
en
Amazon, I mean,
1975,
in around
y ven que Yahe
1975,
empieza a
and
salir
they
a
see that Yahed
a la
starts to
aventura,
come out
ellos se
and starts to
preguntan
do its work,
por Unama.
they start to ask themselves for
¿Quién es
Unamara.
Unama?
And so, who is Unamara?
Y en ese proceso
And
de
in that
buscar
process
Unama,
of searching for Unamara,
surge una alianza
there came an alliance,
donde
a
algunos
weaving
del norte,
with the elders of the
especialmente
north.
los Hopi,
First, it was with the
una
Hopi,
comitiva de indios Hopi que bajaban con
where
sus profecías
representatives from the
y les
Hopi came
mandaban
down with their
lugares
prophecy
específicos
that told them to
para
search for a
buscar
specific
esa
place. They
alianza
found that place, which is in the
en un
Macizo
proceso
Colombiano,
desde aquí
around
muy
6 hours
cerca,
from here where I am.
un lugar muy interesante, muy
A very
importante.
interesting place,
Esos
very
Hopis
important
bajan,
place. These
se
Hopis
encuentran
came
ahí
down and they met
y
there
se hacen parte de la alianza.
and they became part of the alliance of this prophecy from our Amazon and from the Sierra Nevada. This prophecy is very, very large. It has a lot of weaving of many territories and visions. It has a very wide spectrum. But going more to the concrete question, thanks to these Hopis, the elders here started to weave themselves with the ones of the north. And in that, thanks to a character from Peru, something that I was able to know just like a month and a half ago, I was able to sit with an elder that made clear certain parts of this. He spoke of this man from Peru, Mario Osorio, I think. I can't remember his precise name. This elder found in some stones some traces of a prophecy that showed a condor and an eagle. And this elder asked to some other elders of the Andes, and they told him, yes, that of the condor and the eagle is written. And it speaks of a moment that when the condor and the eagle fly together again, they will awaken humanity. There will come the moment where we'll have the possibility of restoring the balance on earth. He becomes very excited with this. And it turns out that in the word of these Andean elders, that prophecy had to do with the eagle representing the mind and the condor representing the heart. That was like the thread of that prophecy. Notwithstanding, when this man from Peru meets with other elders in Mexico and meets people from the great nation of Sioux, Lakota, Hopi, Kiowa, Purépechas, and there are other nations of the South. It was a very, very important meeting, gathering, led by an organization called the Maiz. When they met there, he exposed this word of this new time, and the elders of the North answered, saying, we also know that prophecy, but what we have been told is that if that all only happens inside, nothing will happen. If it's only happens outside, only it will also not happen. Nothing will happen. It has to be a balance because our prophecy speaks of the north as the eagle and the south as the condor. Really? Referring to the territories of North America. We know that in California, the south of the north, there are condors as well. And the bald eagle is more to the north. So they spoke more about this territory. But when the alliance met these elders, they widened that universe and said it is a lot larger than what we had thought before. The condor is all the south until Patagonia, and the eagle is all the north. But the eagle is all the north. So from that moment, that prophecy opens. I'm speaking in the middle of the 80s. That starts to gain momentum and starts to allow ourselves to understand the very deep flow of what that story is. A story that starts to happen inside and outside, thanks to that alliance, is that the elders from here are able to understand that Unamara, that medicine, that grandfather that would come to support the awakening of people was Hikuri, peyote. So when they say Unamara is peyote, and that interlocks with the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, and these two prophecies ally themselves, they unite themselves, they become one prophecy, because it is understood that in that step, it was it was necessary for that alliance of the north and the south in all the ways. And what is evident and seen in the external, you see how the people of the north, North America, are people of the mind, are people of reason, people of logic, something that's very good. And the people of the South are people of the heart, people of emotions, people that move in another frequency, which is also very good. But when the both things are separated, it creates a conflict. Generates a separation, a conflict between the mind and the heart, a conflict between the word of the mother, which is of the heart, and the word of the father, which is of the mind. So, this conflict is what the elders said we must advance. Because if we join together this mind and this heart, then we will really have the possibility of awakening this law of origin, which will allow us to put a precise arrow for the transformation of humanity. So from that moment to this stance has advanced. There have been very key moments, like in 1992, where the journeys of peace started to go, which were like walks from Alaska to Patagonia. It was like somebody from Alaska started to walk south with staffs, like a relay race, and they interweave. And from Patagonia, they would also come up in the race. And those nations would interweave through those races. Then there was another date in 1997 when the alliance was signed. For the first time, the alliance was signed on paper, literally, and there is born that process where the speaker of that signature was the elder Furuya Winaima, which was called Rodolfo Yagrecudo. He was in charge of being the speaker of the weaving between the eagle and the condor. Him being an elder of Amazon tradition, born within the jungle, raised in that, he starts to carry a chanupa. He receives the chanupa of the north. He receives feathers from the north and starts to interweave all that alliance of the condor and the eagle as a possibility of becoming a lot stronger, of being able to reweave everything that has been unwoven, to be able to unite all that line of strength that was broken when they broke the Panama Canal. They cut that canal in Panama. This division became stronger. So now it's to reunite it, doing this outside alliances. What do the people in the north have? How can we help? What do we have in the south? How can we help? What can we do to be able to be stronger together? So this question begins, and this reciprocity starts to flow, this flow of energy, of visions, of medicines. A lot of tools from the north start to arrive to the south. A lot of tools from the south start to go up to the north. And all that flow of tools starts to give us very interesting strength to be able to walk what is a word of the condor eagle, a word of alliance. So how do we ally ourselves? It doesn't mean that we don't share our tools. When I mean that it's an alliance, not a fusion, is that the tools of the south that go to the north, or the tools of the north that go down to the south, must always be used, walked in going to recovering the our own memory, not with just having what is lent to us. Maybe we just keep the name, the word of Wachuma, ayahuasca. I don't mean that. I mean the way in the speak that we pray, the stories that we tell, the dances that we live. We lend each other information so that we can recover our own memory. And that starts to weave the memory of what is the condor and the eagle, a very deep dance between our hearts and our minds, a very deep dance between our territories, an affirmation that there is no longer racism, that it doesn't matter the color of the skin, if we're white, if we're Indian, if we're mestizo, or if we're black, or it no longer matters. What matters is to weave that diversity to strengthen ourselves and return to the balance to the earth, return to the balance to this dimension in all the ways that this means. So the prophecy of the eagle and the condor is a hope that we are walking, is a live prophecy that started 30 years ago, at least 30 years, to at least 35 years that that prophecy has been flowing, has been moving, and is reaching a climax, I feel. We're arriving a climax of that prophecy where the elders say that the eagle has strengthened, the condor has become strong, north and south are in balance, and it is time to make strong east and west so that that four can make a perfection, the square of perfection, a stability that is necessary for the new humanity to be able to be born from that pacarina. Pacarina is like that place of origin, is this portal that's open for something from another dimension to come into this one. So for that square is more solid all the time because from what is the tradition, ancestral indigenous tradition, it corresponds to us that flow north and south. But to other traditions, it corresponded the axis of the east and the west, which happened with yoga and with all these things that come from east and west to be interwoven. So now it's time of the cross. And the time and that prophecy of the eagle and the condor can ally itself with that other prophecy, which I don't know what it's called, that prophecy of east and west. And even there was an event around 15 years ago where I don't know if it was the Dalai Lama or one of the great leaders of Tibet came to Los Andes, to Cusco, and he declared that that center of memory for the protection of the spirit on earth, which was Tibet, was moving to the Andes. That is very interesting. There's a documentary of this. So it's very interesting to see how all those prophecies interweave and that prophecy of the eagle and condor becomes a lot more wider spectrum than we had imagined when we started to weave this. So now something like this, and so I can talk to you about this prophecy that weaves us and has us here.
Thank you, Alejo. I've heard of the continents of the North and the South being like a body, like you were saying. The head being North America and the tail being South America. And I'm curious, when I look at the map, it looks like Colombia is there just beneath the neck, like in the heart. And hearing you talk about the spirit moving to the Andes, I wonder if there is some significance there with the way the organs are placed, with the anatomy of this awakening that you're speaking of.
Ahí los abuelos tienen un
The
mapa
elders there have a map, which is very powerful. This map speaks of America as three main territories, which are the territory of the South, the territory of the Center, and the territory of the North. Those three territories are fractals. Each one within itself contains its own head, its own heart, its own liver, its own genitals, in a parity. In each one of those territories, there's a siku, there's a penis, there's a vagina. All the masculine organ and feminine organs are interwoven within those territories. So the territory of the South is a territory that is woven from Patagonia, from the land of fire, until here, until where I am, which is the south of Colombia, the frontier with Ecuador. There, where we are is the portal, the door, the bridge that connects the south with the center. We can say those that inhabit here that we are people of the south and that we're also people of the center at the same time. We have that faculty. It's that point of connection. Then the territory of the center goes until Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is the door between the center and the north. It is that bridge. So the people that are in Costa Rica, they can say they're people from the center, but also people from the north. So what the elders would say was that there was a necessity of guarding the memory of the territory of the center. And for that, there will serve assurances in the memory of the center. There is a word of the Mamos of the Sierra Nevada where they say that the Sierra Nevada is the heart of the world. They say that this is the heart of the world. And at the same time, it is the heart of the center. And from there, it irradiates. It says that word that they speak of the nine snowy peaks, which are nine snowy peaks of the center territory. Mostly are in Colombia. The first one, there was guarded an information, there was kept a memory. They said that when the moment arrives, the condor of the south will arrive here and the eagle of the north will come here to these nine peaks to gather all the information which we have kept there. And the Mamos did all that travel, all that journey, like more than 500 years ago, and they kept in all those peaks from people memories of the north of the south, and they started to put in those peaks the information. They put it in the snow, in the caves, in the stones, and they put that memory there waiting for the day that the prophecy will arrive, so that for the north would awaken and for the south to awaken, the center must awaken. If the center does not awaken, they will not be able to awaken either north or the south. But if the north and the south don't awaken, the center won't have the energy to awaken. So it's a bit paradoxical because it's a circle where you don't know where it begins, but you know that it has to flow. So in that flow, you understand that territory of the center, we could speak of Colombia, Panama, Costa Rica. It is understood that that is the heart of memory where it is gathered all that information and where they have converged in a more impacting way all the medicines. There has been a greater opening to this. In the north, there are many medicines that are very alive. In the south, there are many medicines of the south that are very alive. But in the center, you find the ones in the north of the south and the center all alive at the same time. So that is possible from the pulsation of those nine peaks, those nine snowy peaks are emanating to return that information. We're opened a process here to go to those nine snowy peaks. We've gone to four of them from here to the north. We still have five more to visit, but we are visiting them and nourishing ourselves from that and gathering from there the alliance that has been gestated. And they say that the center is the territory of agreements, and where the people of the north and the south come to make agreements, to recognize each other, and to nourish ourselves from the emotion that was kept here, so that that heart can lift its energy to the north and the south. So that there are very specific peaks. There are several, but the more recognized one is the south, is Aconcagua and Ausangate, which are very important mountains. In the north, I only know of Shasta. I know that Shasta is considered like the central axis of the memory of the north. I know that there are other mountains that are more towards the east, but I don't know which one it is. I don't know if the States or in Canada, but I know that there are other mountains there. I don't know. Eh, we will have to go and pilgrimage there and find those baskets where the nourishment has been kept. So that is a bit of that anatomy. I have cleared the anatomy here of the center, and I have mediumly cleared the anatomy of the south. exception of what was Brazil, where there are some mountains that have been worked with, but I don't have it completely cleared. I still have a lot to walk, and there's still a lot of elders to meet. It's the north is where I have least clarity, but there is a family awakening. Yeah. So it's all being woven to be able to understand where that vulva is, where that pacarina, that territory of birth, where the heart of the north, the brain of the north, the spinal column of the north, each organ. So a study that corresponds to us to do. And we ask the elders about that. And two times it has happened to me with serious elders that you ask them about that and they talk to you a lot about the center. And when you ask about the other territories, and they say, just you answer me because you are the prophecy. You're the new people, the young people of this generation that have to do that path and reawaken that memory because all of that has been forgotten. So that's what we're on right now, to be able to map better and recognize better how that body is, how it vibrates, to understand how to pay with what energy we must give to those hills and what energy we receive from those mountains. Not always hills, there can be plains, it can be rivers, it can be stones, it can be caves. There's places where matter where in matter there was information kept, hearts of memory. So, there to speak a little bit of that anatomy, because we can make it wider, but I may confuse people with too much information of places and lines. So, not wanting to go so specifically into this, what I have said, there is a context that allows us to understand how the elders saw this weaving of the great anaconda. They called America that way, the great anaconda, all this mountain range, and with its belly, with the Amazon, and it's all this mountain range. It's like that spinal column, the Andes. They go under the water and they go back up. And if I'm not mistaken, I could be. It's the same mountain range that goes up through California or Oregon. I can't remember. Yeah, I think it's the same mountain range. I think it's the same column of the anaconda of which the elders spoke. The anaconda has those three bodies, those three great territories. Also, within these big territories, there are smaller territories, many of them, which interweave that living body that we're speaking of.
Thank you, Alejo. I'm going to ask a couple more questions, and then soon we'll also open for questions from the group. So if questions are popping up, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can call you to ask your question as the time arrives. And Alejo, one of the themes that is so potent in many of the stories that you share is this theme of forgetting and remembering. And as you talk about these different baskets being placed in these different mountains or caves or lakes, I'm wondering if there is a story that you could share with us, illustrating the awakening of a person in that story. I guess part of what I'm asking is if you could illustrate what awakening might look like from the Andean Cosmovision. Like in some Buddhist traditions, there are very specific stages of awakening and timeframes and experiences. And in the time that I've sat with you, it seems there's a different movement that's illustrated through these stories.
Hay una historia que se ha vuelto
There's a
principal
story that has become very important to us because of this time, and it
y es
is
un poco este
and
trabajo
illustrates a little bit about this
es
work.
complejo en este
It's
medio
complex through this medium
podamos abrir la
to be
historia
able to open this story
pero
completely,
un vislumbre
but we'll
de lo que
share a
es en sí.
glimpse of what this story is.
Es una historia
It's a
muy conocida
story that we recognize it as a story of Incarri and Koyari.
es una historia que
It's a
habla
story that speaks
de Viracocha,
of
del gran
Viracocha,
hacedor,
of the
del gran
great
retentor,
maker, the great orderer.
y es una forma de llamar a
It's a
Dios
way of calling
bajo
God
su facultad de
under
ordenar
its
la
faculty
realidad.
of ordering reality.
Se dice que
It is
él
said that
iba buscando
he was searching for
alguien que
someone
cuide esta
that
creación,
would care for this creation.
esta creación
The story says
es
that
el
this creation
reflejo
is the
de la madre Dios,
reflection of the Mother of God.
¿sí? O sea, Viracocha hizo
Viracocha
la imagen de su
created a memory of its
madre
own
para
mother to be able to
agradecerle
care for it and to give thanks for
esa
its own
imagen de
life.
su madre
That
es
image
esta realidad.
of his mother is this reality.
Entonces él empieza a buscar
So he starts to
dentro del
search.
desorden,
After there was a lot of
dentro
chaos, after there was a lot of disorder and
y
chaos,
ordena
he
todo
searches, he
para
orders,
encontrar
and he says, I will
alrededor de él.
find who is able to order this
Entonces muy
dimension.
lejos de él
After
andar
many
buscando,
attempts and searching,
hace el intento de ordenar
he makes the
y
attempt
esto está
to order
antes de
with
nosotros.
this humanity, with
Los
us as
elders
humans.
sitúan este momento hace
The
miles de mil
elders,
años.
they place this thousands of years
Algunos
ago.
difieren de la fecha, ¿no? Algunos
They,
hablan de
they
6.000 años, otros
some
de
speak
2.500,
26,000, other
otros incluso
8,000,
más.
other 5,000, others even more. We don't know.
Pero el punto es que en un momento
The
dado,
point being that at
Viracocha
some
busca
point,
cómo
Viracocha searches for how
esa
to
misión. Y en un
give that
momento dado
mission.
aparece
And at that moment, a
entre Manco
couple
Cápac y
appears called
parece que
Manco
sí
Capac
había
and
por lo
Mama
menos cuatro
Okjo.
Manco Cápacs
Yeah, it must
en
be
esta
said
historia.
that in the story there are at least four Manco Capacs. This is
Y
the
en un momento
first
dado
Manco
aparece la
Capac.
primera
The
Mama
first
Okjo,
Manco Capac and the first Mama Okjo,
reciben la misión
they received the mission.
y Viracocha les dice,
And
para lo que
Viracocha
ustedes son capaces de
uh, received the
cuidarlas,
mission, and he
de
says
cuidarles
to
de
see
esta
that you're
realidad,
able to care for this earth, to
les
care
da
for this
una
world.
espada
He
y
gives
una
them
mano
a staff and a
y
spindle.
dice, si usted hace brillar esta
And if you
espada con
make
la luz
this
del sol,
staff shine with the light of the
si
sun,
usted hace
and he
brillar
says
esta
to the woman,
espada
and
con
if
la
you
luz
make
del
this
moon,
spindle
yo voy a
shine
saber
with the light of the
que ustedes
moon,
son
I
capaces
will
de
know
cuidar el
that
árbol
you are able to
y les
care
voy a entregar
for this magic. And I
el
will give you
código de
the
creación,
code of
la ley,
creation, the law of
para que con ese
origin,
código
so that with that
ustedes
code,
cuiden
you
esta
can
realidad.
care for this reality.
Entonces, la única pista que les da
So the only hint
es
that
dice,
he
para que
gives
este
him
bastón brille,
is that for this staff to
usted lo tiene
shine,
que enterrar
you
en
must
el
put it
centro del
in the
mundo.
center of the
Cuando
world.
usted lo entierra en el centro del mundo, el
When
bastón va
you
a brillar.
bury it in the center
Y
of
de
the
ahí voy
world,
a saber que está
then
enterrado.
the staff will shine, and there I will know.
Con la
When the
luz del
staff
sol,
shines with this
el
light of the
uso va
sun,
a reflejar
and the
la luz
uso,
lunar.
the spindle,
Y así
will
les da esta pista.
reflect the light of the moon with it,
Larga
and then
historia.
I will give this
Ellos
code.
buscan
Long
muchos
story,
territorios,
they
llevan
search in a
muchas
lot of
personas,
territory, they put the
miles de
staff in
kilómetros,
many
y no
places, in one
encuentran
place,
nada.
in another, and they don't achieve anything.
Larga historia,
And
ellos
after a
se
very
rinden
long story, they
por no
surrender
poder, de no
of
saber.
not being
Se
able to
rinden
do it, of
ante su
not knowing
incapacidad.
how. They surrender to
Y se
their
rinden
incapacity. And when
de
they
todas las
surrender,
formas.
they don't just
Y por eso
surrender,
se rinden
they
en el amor al
surrender
espíritu,
in the
en
love
el
for
amor
the
al
Great
código.
Spirit, in the love for
Sí, no es
Viracocha.
una rendición de
It
solo
is not a
soltar,
surrendering of
porque
just
dicen,
letting go.
nosotros no somos
They say
capaces,
that
pero
we're
en
not
este
able
amor
to
que
do
les
it, but in
tenemos,
this love that we have for Viracocha,
vamos a criar
we're going to
a
grow
uno que sí sea
someone
capaz de hacer.
that will be able to
Aunque
do it.
nosotros no, de pronto
Even if
nuestro hijo sí.
we were not able,
Sí,
maybe
sí,
our
ellos
child will be able to do it. So they say that
dicen,
they make love.
uno es
And that
la
is the
historia
first
humana
time in the
que
human
se hace
story
mundo.
where love is
Hasta ese
made.
punto todo
Until that
era
point,
una
everything had
reproducción,
been biological
un
reproduction,
impulso
an
humano,
impulse, an animal
sí, un
impulse,
instinto.
an instinct.
Pero esa vez ellos se
But in that
reproducen no
moment,
por
they
instinto,
reproduced
sino
not
por
because of
amor.
instinct, but
Y
because
ahí
of
es
love.
cuando, ¡pum!,
They say that when that penetration occurs, to be able to plant that seed, the staff shines with the light of the sun. They found the center of the world. They were walking everywhere to see where was the center of the world and it wouldn't shine. And the center of the world was there between their legs. There was the possibility of shining. In that moment appears Viracocha and rebaptizes this couple and gives them a name that is really a state of consciousness, a name that is a state that is achieved. Manco Capac goes to be called Incarri, and Mama Occho is called Koyari. So there we see a bit of the essence of what is awakening from the Andean world because they awaken. How do we search for what that means? We see it in the names because the elders they leave these stories without interpretation, and then so they leave us at a standstill. It's like, well, what does that mean? But then something happens. Then they leave it in Quechua, in the tongue, in the language itself is understood the interpretation of these things. So I say this to give an example. Incari. In is a particle, it's a syllable in Quechua. In Quechua is a agglutinating language. It is composed of syllables that have meaning, like German. You agglutinate word and create larger words to be able to find the meaning. In Quechua means the maximum expression of something. Punctually, it means like when something arrives to its center and from its center irradiates all its potential. For example, in Quechua, ti is sun. When the sun is being born, it's called anti. An is a symbol that expresses the opening of something that opens all possibilities. But when the sun is at its zenith, it's at its center, it's a moment of maximum expression. It's called inti. Inti is the maximum expression of the sun. When the sun arrives to its center and irradiates everything. So in, we already know, it's to be able to find the center of ourselves to be your best version of yourself, to give your maximum that you can give. Ka is a particle that refers to everything that has been created, that which is manifested, that which is solid. Everything that has been manifested is ka. And ri means an arrow that is thrown and cannot be stopped, something that has so much momentum or has a permanent movement, a flow of vibration so high that cannot be stopped. So inkari, which we can also translate in another word, because in, as we already said, is kari, means some, sorry. So inkari is something that arrives to its center of its existence. To reach our center has to do with not going around in circles in our mind and not in our mind and not in our emotions. Has to do something with what we call kawai, which translated literally means contemplation, which is the essence of contemplating existence. When we achieve that state of kawai, we achieve that state of deep contemplation of existence. We become living offerings and we are in our center. So Inkari is to achieve the maximum center, to realize ourselves, to be the best version of what we can be, which does not evoke a perfection. There is no is a perfection, not conceptual perfection. To arrive to the center and be the best that you can be, not what others think that you can be, but what you know that that can be the best version of yourself. So that is what differs, and here you can correct me because I do not know much about Oriental tradition, is where I feel that it differs from the concept of illumination. Because in the Andes, that maximum expression of ourself can contain a lot of mistakes. You can continue making mistakes. Inkari, after being Inkari in the story, makes a lot of mistakes and still is the best version of himself that he can be. So it's not a state of that puts you above others. It puts you in the center, and that is to awaken. Mama Okjo, we said that received the name of Koyari or Kuyari in a more ancient Quechua. Ku is a syllable that means something that receives to be able to give transit. It's like a container that gives a process so something will transit to another state, like a uterus. A uterus contains to transform and go from one state to another of that being, like a sort of bridge, like a sort of container bridge. Yan is wisdom, is living wisdom. It's not knowledge, it's wisdom. In Quechua, wisdom is generally said yachak, but cha just means the arrival of something. So if I say yacha, it's like the arrival of wisdom when wisdom arrives. Wisdom itself is ya, and ri is a vibration that cannot be stopped. So kuyari is that mother, which is said that is the container, the uterus, transformer of wisdom, is that which contains wisdom and allows for wisdom to transform itself, materialize itself. So it says Koyari is like a great portal. She, as the elder said, women are worth for themselves. Men have to do a lot of work to be able to give value of their own origin. Women already have that integrated within their own nature, just for the possibility of being able to give birth and to give nourishment. Even if a woman has removed her uterus, she still has that energetic organ within themselves and is able to give birth projects, stories, knowledge. They're great organizers. They know by nature how to be part of creation. They are creativity in itself, and that is the expression of Kuyari. Yari is to become not a creator, but to become creativity in itself. So Kuyari said, in other words, the maximum expression of creativity. It is a woman that achieves to be able to be creativity. She is creativity because she is the wisdom that transits through from the mystery into this dimension. So those two names, Kari, Koyari, are the synonyms of awakening in the Andean world. That story speaks to us of the first people that awaken, that reach that potentiality. They start to walk that cycle, which is a cycle that then these are many versions. I personally, I think in the cycle of 26,000 years is the one I like the most. And I think that it concurs with other stories because there is a story of a fall of the process in the middle of the process. In the middle of the process, everything went cold and it had to restart from zero in the middle of a process of 26,000 to 13,000 years. So in the scientific story, we know that at that moment everything froze and we had to start from zero. So that hint is the one that makes me think of the 26,000 year cycle. But if you research further, you will know that there are many versions of this. through all of this process, Inkari and Koyari go through all those times, different nations that grow and fall. And in that, they start to keep some souls. We call them seeds. The story calls them seeds. These seeds that are souls of those that were able to awaken, that were able to find their center. They take them out of reincarnation. And they're like, oh, this one's not going to reincarnate more because I'm going to keep it. Koyari, in that vessel that she has, she starts to keep all the souls. And they say that in this chaotic and chaotic world, in this world full of madness and of spinning without stopping, we're going to guard this because at the end of the cycle of 26,000 years, Viracocha is said to return to ask if Inkari and Koyari were able to fulfill his vision or not. So they say that when he arrives, all these souls must be here to demonstrate to the Great Spirit that we were able to do it. Those souls, they guard them, they keep them for this moment. So we're in a moment where the story says that what is needed for a seed to germinate, you need several things. You need darkness, and you need fertilizer. Fertilizer is naturally shit. Shit is fertilizer that makes the earth be fertile. So we start to see so why this time is so dark and so full of shit, and you'll start to lose hope. You see some of the news, and it's like, oh my god, what happened? The world is completely dark and full of dirtiness, and then you remember the story. They allowed for that darkness. They allowed for all that filth so that it would be the perfect fertilizer, so that when Viracocha returns, they can extend all those seeds and then can emerge the new people. They say that they had two types of seeds, one that we call chakaruna and the other that we call musukuruna. Chakaruna is the first seed that is sown. It's the bridge people. That's what chakaruna means, bridge people. So bridge people is those that are able to weave bridges between space, to be able to weave territories, alliances, to weave nations, and it is able to weave through time. People that are able to connect to the memory of the ancestors and to the memory of the future. And that's what we are. We're all this generation, all the ones that are alive that were born between un, before 2012 or chacarrona, people that have one foot in the system and one foot outside the system, that we have an ability to understand the language of the monster and the language of the elders of the ancestors. Chakaruna is the one that in that story is in charge of weaving the bridge for Musukruna to arrive, which is the second type of seed, which is already the elders, the ones that come to just realize themselves beyond any conditioning concept or anything. They come to realize just as they are, and without romanticism, not that our children or grandchildren are going to be perfect people under some Western thought of what is perfect. We simply speak that they simply people that are free, people that are realized and conscious of what life is, understanding the relation between life and the Mother Earth and the care for Mother Earth. So just like on top a little bit, there's a lot of details in this story, but the essence of this story speaks to us of this work of awakening, of what we understand of awakening and what relates this moment of awakening of all humanity, because it's good to say that in this story, Inkari is eliminated as a human. And for this time, the prophecy for him said that I will return and I will be millions. No, I will no longer be just one man. I will no longer be one. I will be everyone. So that essence is there. That essence that is this time of awakening is not of one or of a Christ or of a Krishna or one illuminated being that's going to illuminate all of us. It is a time for we all awaken together and we all become together that illuminated being. That we say that we all become the body of Inkari. I don't know if I understood the question, but there's the answer.
Thank you. We had a question come through from Michal, so I'll go ahead and ask that one. He asked, what is the meaning and value of the word in the Andean world? What does it mean to sustain a living word?
En nuestra historia de creación,
In our story of creation, there is a moment of that birth of the great mother, the mother nothingness, the elders call it. When mother nothing, which we also call Wa, where mother nothing gives birth to the great spirit. He, she gives birth to the great spirit. So let's say even God was given birth by a woman. In that moment of that birth, there emerged the first scream of the mother. The mother screams in that birth. It said that it was a scream of pleasure, of a cosmic orgasm that was mutilated for us, that we have forgotten. That you can give birth with pleasure, and that pain of giving birth can be a great pleasure, an orgasm of creativity. So that scream, that first moan, that first expression of creativity of mother nothing, that's the first sound. That first sound, we call it kun, or gun is also pronounced. It can be pronounced in both ways, kun or gun. And its essence of creation. In the Andean world, like in many traditions that I know, the first was the word, and from the word, everything was created. I've heard it in all the traditions that I've heard. So maybe there's some that no, or maybe for something of life, I've heard just those. Yeah, I haven't heard those. But the ones that I've heard, first the lost silence, and then the word. And from mother nothing, there comes that first word that starts to give shape. In that moment, also arrives Allyu Tisqi, which is a light, which is so light and sound emerge at the same time, and their dance manifests all creation. So when the elders speak of the word, they speak of the first staff, the essence of creation, the essence of creativity. They say that the word is what makes us the children of God, children of the great mother. That is what has us in the possibility of creating above what is already created. We can create things because we have that creative power of the word. So the word is the essence of the great spirit, is the essence of creativity, is the strength of creation. And we must understand that well, because when we speak of word, we do not mean just to the verbalization of sound, because the elders say your word is your life. How we vibrate, even if we are silent, we are speaking. Who knows how to listen, listens to the vibration of our being. Each one vibrates in one way, a sound that is maybe inaudible to our ears, but is always there. That is also our word. How are we vibrating? So, how we are walking our lives, our thoughts, our emotions, our feelings, our actions, all those vibrations, all those frequencies are word. We must understand this because we could just think that the word is concept that we verbalize from our mind. Elders say that the word is the staff of existence, is something that we can see, that quantum physics speaks of that. I don't know so much of that. There were others that know more, but they say that they say the same thing. Everything is vibration. Everything is frequency. Is what the elders say. It's very basic. It's what we all know. But sometimes we have to be reminded of this, to have it present, to become accustomed to this. Like, oh yes, it's always like no, we have to remember of the responsibility that that conveys, because it is responsibility. So the importance of guarding the word is the importance of counting to 10. No, to speak to God, sorry. The elders speak a very important word, which is wiwanakwi, which means to grow together. When I help you grow, you help me grow. And that applies even with God. They say that we are part of God and God is raising us. But the law of Wiwanakui is that if someone raises us, we have to raise them as well. And their way of raising God, saying in another way, it means God is a great storyteller, and we are his stories. And to care for God is to care for our own story, and that is to raise God, to give him stories, our lives, our paths, give him the opportunity to express an infinity of possibilities. So the importance of caring for the word is the importance of caring for God, caring for our vibrations so that our story, our word that we are telling is an expression, diverse, infinite, new, where the only thing that bores God is that we repeat the same story over and over again. And that has happened to us as humanity. We have been tangled in a vicious cycle where we're in the same and in the same and in the same over and over again. And that bores God. Make mistakes, make a lot of mistakes, but each time a new mistake, make a new mistake. Like if you make a new mistake, God will be continue to be happy with the story. Let's go see, let's let him see another expression of the infinity. But if we repeat the same story, it gets bored. And that's what the elder says. Great Spirit is getting bored of of humanity, of humans, and he wants to sweep it away. So maybe they'll make new stories. He wants new stories. So we have to care for our own story. So we must can care for the Great Spirit through that power.
We had a question come in from Chelsea. Chelsea, would you like to unmute and ask yourself?
Yeah. I guess my question is just from your personal experience and opinions, how important is it to kind of like have a community around you when you are going to like speak with our like ancestors or speak with others in different realms? Like, would it be, I don't want to use the word dangerous because I'm not really, it's not the word I'm looking for, but how, I guess like just what is your like personal opinion on that if you're able to do that, but you've never done it in like a group setting or like how, I guess sorry, I'm like, this is like, I'm so new to this. I guess what I'm trying to ask is like, how important is it to have like a community around you while you're doing that? Like, is it unsafe? Is it like, should you wait until you have one around you, or just like, I guess that's what I'm trying to ask. Like, is community, like, do these situations, is the outcome like almost better if you have a community around you versus if you just try to go at it like on your own, I guess. Sorry if that doesn't make complete sense. I'm still a little confused myself.
It makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Hay un camino
There's a path open for everyone,
y el camino en lo profundo
and the path
es personal.
deep in the profound is personal, is individual. Nobody can walk for ourselves. In the end, in the essence, in the center essence of the path, we are alone, like in quotes,
Pero estamos ahí.
but we are
Nadie
there.
puede ayudarnos.
Nobody can help us. Nobody can touch that interior
Por eso
space.
es importante tenerlo
And
claro.
that's important to have it clear because often the community processes can become processes of a homogenization. And as we said, the spirit is looking for diversity, new stories. If everything becomes the same, it gets bored. So we must be careful with that. However, with the story that I was telling a moment ago, it tells us this is no longer a moment of one Buddha, not the moment of one Christ, of one master, is a moment of a nation. So the elders say that the path of the hermit was very valid and was very beautiful during a long time, but during this time it no longer applies. It is no longer what is necessary because if not, it would be easy. As I said, I lived 2 years in that path. And for me, it was very easy because I was there. And in my story, nobody bothered me. I thought that I was almost illuminated because I lived in the mountain under my own rules without not going into the system with money, with nothing. When I left there, I had to go back to my mother's house. I wanted to go back to accompany her. And there I realized of all that I was lacking really to be able to even get close to that process of realization. All that those things that I thought I already accomplished when I started to relate with my blood family, with the system, with having to stand all these things of the world, it made me realize that oof, how easy I can lie to myself. How in that path that is opened when we work with medicine and with these travels to other dimensions, it's very clear that we must go through all our mind, all our unconsciousness, and even the collective unconsciousness. We must go through that to be able to get close to a real vision. And this is the most complex part of this path for me. How do we differentiate when it is my mind and when it is the spirit, when it is my unconscious, when it is the territory? And I don't have a clear answer for that if somebody was going to ask that, because that's something that is within the heart, that beyond being the heart, it has to do that we have seen when people start to come into this path, closed within their bubble, they can come into some very beautiful things, but suddenly there comes the traps. These spirits that these energies that make disorder, that make the tangle, and we've seen very terrible consequences. We've seen cases that, and I don't even want to tell them here, but we have seen fatal consequences of people with medicine going into very complex situations. Like one of the ugliest. There was a man in Chile. He started to take medicine, and he created a community, but in base of him, not in base of a community thought, like in base of his thought. No, nobody could tell him nothing. He would receive the visions, and that's it. And that he would say that he had to save the world from the end in 2002, in like 2012. And so he went up to a hill with his community and with his wife and his child. And I saw that my child is the Antichrist who will bring the end of the world. So they offered him to the fire, the baby. They waited 6 months and the world didn't end. We accomplished our mission. Evidently, almost all of them ended up in jail, and he ended up killing himself. That's a very strong story, very heavy story, maybe one of the heaviest ones that I know. I dare to place it here to show that there are consequences, very complex consequences of getting tangled within our own mind, our own visions, and starting to think that we're possessors of an absolute truth. I have the truth. What is the assurance so that that won't happen to us? The assurance is the community. When we weave with the community, we care for our backs, and we weave it from a respect of the chairs that each one has, but not with a hierarchy. We weave it under the clarity that we can say what we see in the others, that we are looking at each other's backs, because often we cannot see our own backs. So when we are in community, we have that opportunity to review ourselves among each other and to say, hey, be careful with that. I feel that I'm the Christ. The classic one, that's super classic. Oh, I've realized that I am the Christ, that I am the reincarnation of Buddha, I'm the reincarnation, I'm the savior. It happens all the time. I've seen it happen a lot. When that happens alone, people get lost in that dizziness, and a lot of beautiful things are lost. But when we are in community, there's always going to be somebody that's going to tell you, like, hey, wait, calm, wait, breathe, review well what you are seeing, review well what you are seeing. There is an elder that can tell you how it is. I remember a man that came here and he was telling me, I'm the reincarnation of John the Baptist. I'm John the Baptist. And we were in a ceremony with a lot of people, and he stood up and said, I'm John the Baptist, and I've come to tell you, Alejandro, that you are the Christ, and I've come to follow you because you are the Christ. I was left cold at the first moment. Like, he was waiting for my answer, and I told him, yes, brother, you're right. And I saw that all the family turned around to look at me like, what? And I told them, yes, I am the Christ. But this one next to me, he is also the Christ. And that one over there, he's also the Christ. And all the people here, they're also the Christ. So your vision is not necessarily wrong. You're right. You're seeing well. But widen your vision a little bit more. Because if you realize you are also the Christ, things like that. I put it as an example to say there are assurances of life in community, and life in community is very hard, very complex, because everyone has their visions, and we can't walk the romanticism of we're a community of illuminated beings that love Pachamama, peace and love, and what a blessing. And that's a great lie. It's a great lie. Because when we get together for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and everything like that, wait for a year. You're in a community. I remember a grandmother in a gathering meeting. Hey, grandmother, you that you're a master. Wait. Come and live with me for 3 months. Come and see my life 3 months to live with me. And if after those 3 months you still call me master, grandmother, I will receive it. But until you have not lived with me They have not seen how difficult I am and how angry I get and all these problems that I have. Don't come and tell me that I am a master because you don't know me. And that is an essence of the path. It's not romantic. It's a lot easier to do the path alone. But the word of the elders says that we must dare to do it in community because that is where the challenge is. It makes us review our hearts and our minds. It's very easy to just escape, to run. People always want to make community, and 2 months later they want to run away because they didn't like something, because somebody did something, someone didn't do something. It's sad, but it's true. So even if it's complex, what this time needs is that we dare to make family and to live together. And it's worth to say, to make clear that it's vital, it's completely vital to get rid of idealism, get rid of projection, mental projections of how things ought to be. Something that I fight a lot with. Oh, you're a master, and I'm like, yeah, I can know some things, but don't put me in a posture where later, when you know me better and you see my darkness and you see all the shit that I have inside of me, oh, it was a lie. He wasn't really a master. I always try to make clear. Wait, don't put me in a chair because I'm not that. I have a lot of ugly things, and I have a lot of beautiful things, like everybody. So when we start to make community within idealism, everything goes to hell. But if we start to make community under a sincerity, to be really sincere, to be really open with our lives and with the world, to recognize, yeah, the world is dark, but this is part of this. And the most important thing is not to run away. Oh, this one is bad because he did, so I'm gonna leave this community. No, the opposite. This one is bad in the community, so what do we have to do? To help. And if I see that the other one is bad, what is in me that allows me to see the other person? There's something inside of me that makes me judge him. So let's heal together. You heal, I heal. And that way we sustain. To run away is very easy. The elders say to make things is easy. The real work is to sustain them. There is where you see. And somebody told me Alejo is mambiador. I've been doing it for 12 years. And then elders, I don't know if Alejo is a mambiador. And I'm like, well, what does he mean? And I was like, I don't know. Why? He says, because I'll see if in 50 years I come back and you're still seated there mambiando, then I will say that you were a mambiador. Now, I can't say that right now because I don't know. To do mambiar is easy, but to sustain it through your life, that is a question. So we will see. The same thing with a couple. And this is my wife. And you will say, oh, and if in 40 years I see you together, I'll say it's your wife. If in 5 years you separate, oh, then it wasn't your wife. Because the matter is about sustaining. So within this tradition, it's necessary to do it in community. And that doing it in community is not merely just trying, it is but to sustaining, even though it is complex.
Thank you so much. That is exactly what I think I was supposed to hear today. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, we have one last question here in the chat that I think will help us come to a close. So we're going to go just a couple minutes over. If you feel like you need to pop out, go ahead. The last question is, we seem to be lacking these kinds of stories from our elders in the North and Western culture. How do we find and reclaim them in Western culture?
¿Cuál es la pregunta?
Um, we seem to be lacking these kinds of stories from our elders in the North and Western culture. How do we find and reclaim them?
Primero, esas historias
First,
están.
those stories are there.
Estoy seguro. Hay muchos lugares donde
There are many places where they say that they're no longer
en
there.
el norte de
I
Europa,
remember in the north of Europe,
alguien me decía, es que
I
aquí
was
no
there and
hay
here.
ningún
There's
único que sepa
no
historias.
elders that know stories.
¿Sí? No hay historias.
There's no
Solamente
stories
lo que
here
es
that
nuestra
speak to
tradición.
us of our tradition.
Y yo le decía,
And I told him,
momento, pero
a moment,
a mí
but
me criaron
I grew up with
oyendo sus historias.
hearing your stories.
A mí me criaron leyéndome un
I
cuento de
grew up
Blancanieves. Entonces,
reading Snow White and the Seven
el
Dwarfs.
sistema
And yeah, the
transformó esa
system
historia y se
transformed the
transformó
story and became an
en un
animation,
montón de
a
cosas.
movie, and a lot of
Esas
things.
historias,
But
¿de
those
dónde venían?
stories, where are
De
they
los
really
hermanos
from?
Grimm, y entiendo
The
por qué
Brothers
inventan las
Grimm?
historias. Ellos
I understood that they didn't invent the stories,
eran
they gathered those stories,
ancestrales,
ancestral stories.
estaban ahí.
Those, they were
Entonces,
there. It's those
ellos dicen,
stories.
pero
But
¿eso qué va a tener de espiritual?
but
Si
what
eso no pasa por
spirituality is
ningún
gonna be
lado,
there? They're children's
no hay
stories.
nada que me esté hablando.
They don't have nothing that's speaking to
Para
me.
nosotros
For us,
fue igual.
it was the
Muchas
same.
de las historias que yo
A lot of the
cuento
stories
son
that I
simplemente
hear, that I
leyendas
tell,
que la gente
are
las
known
cuenta.
as legends and people know
Y
them,
eso no tiene nada de
but
malo.
that doesn't, they say that doesn't really have
Lo que
anything.
pueden hacer es
The work that we
reinterpretarlas.
have is to
Por
reinterpret them.
ejemplo, con la historia de
For
Incari,
example, with the
hay
story of
muchos
Inkari,
libros
what do you find in in the books of
en
myths of
donde dicen, mira,
Inkari?
en este
You'll
momento
find that in that moment, Manco Capac
recordó cómo
was
Incari se
crowned as
convirtió en rey de su
Inkari and he
nación.
became the king of his nation.
Ya,
There,
no dice nada
there.
más.
Doesn't say anything else.
Entonces, si tú lo miras así nomás,
So if you just
ah, pues aquí
see
no
it
hay
like
nada.
that,
Sí,
well, you
no
say
cambió
there's nothing
absolutamente
there.
nada.
Oh, man, he became king. Okay.
Pero si tú entonces te paras a
But
observar,
if you stop and you
hace
observe,
un rato,
that's
¿qué
what I
es eso?
said before. What is
A
Inkari?
ver, indaguemos en la lengua. ¿Qué
Let's
significa?
go deeper within the
Entonces,
language. What does that mean? Oh,
Incari es una expresión, tal.
oh, it's a maximum expression,
Y le dan
and
otro
all of a sudden
significado.
it has another sense, the
Ya no es
story.
la historia de
It's
un
no longer
niño
the
que era rey,
story of a man that became king.
sino ya es,
It's
es
a
aquí pasó
story
este estado de
of
poder
a man that
y pasó
achieved this
esto.
state of consciousness, and
Y
it
entonces ya no
implies
son
all these
historias.
things. Those stories
Lo
are
que hay que
there. What
instituirlos,
we must do is shake ourselves of
tener la humildad para escuchar historias
the
muy
mind,
simples,
and to be able
desde
to
la
have the
más
humility to
desde
listen
las
to very
profundas,
simple stories, a very simple story. Most of the
el
ancestral stories, they're
lobo
simple.
bajó y pasó
The
esto,
wolf
y qué es
came up,
eso,
came down, and then something happened. And what
qué
is that? Oh, that's
significa,
nothing. But if you start to go deeper,
cuáles son
what
las
does the wolf
cualidades del
mean?
lobo,
What are the
qué es
qualities
lo
of
que
the wolf?
vive.
What does the wolf live?
Entonces el lobo significa esto, esto
So
y
the
esto.
wolf means this, and then the story
La
starts to
montaña,
change. The mountain. He went up a mountain, and it doesn't say
¿qué es
anything
la
else.
montaña para nosotros?
Oh, what is the mountain for
La
ancestors?
visión del mundo
Is
desde
where
nuestra
you find the
perspectiva.
vision of the world, where we can observe reality.
Entonces de decir, el lobo
So from
bajó,
saying the wolf went
eso
up the
hace
mountain, you
énfasis
can go to
en el
say
pensamiento
the
de
thought
nación, porque eso
of
está
the
ahí,
nation,
ese
because that is a
pensamiento de
wolf,
nación,
the thought of nation,
el
of the
pensamiento de
of
la nación
the thought of the
puede
nation
llegar a su estado de
was able to
transformación para
go
ver
to a
todo el mundo,
higher state of vision to see all the
cambia
world.
la manera en que
It
lo cuenta.
changes. It changes the way that you say this and
Todo
understand this when you
está
start to
dentro de
go
las historias.
into the codes that are woven into the stories. That on
Necesitamos
one
la
side.
humildad para escuchar las
We
historias
need that humility
y las
to
ganas de
listen to those simple stories and the will
sumergirnos en
to
los
research
códigos
into the
de la
archetypes and
resina
codes
para
and learn to be able to unravel
en territorios como el territorio del
in
norte, donde muchos
stories
juzgamos
in
muy
the territory like in the north.
conspiraciones, ¿no?
They're very
Hay
like
cosas que son más
stubborn
encontrables.
old men. It's hard to
Hay
get
cosas que
them
son más
into,
difíciles.
And the blonder you are, the harder it is to get them to speak. It doesn't mean that it's impossible. It requires a lot of humility. It requires to dare to be allowed to be humiliated often because the Lakota, they're angry and they filter. They have a filter. They bother you. They do bullying. And they'll have you there a year, 2 year bullying. Like go. That's how I have lived and how I have seen it happen. You hold strong, and there comes a moment where there's a click. An elder even once punched me in the face, and he told me, "Go from here." I just sat there, and for 3 days, he would knock my hat off. He'd tell me, "What are you here for? You're dumb." 3 days like that. I was going into despair. What do I do? What do I do? This man is really offensive. How can he be an elder? He can be here hitting me. But my heart told me something differently. Just sustain. The fourth day, he changed all the dynamic. And he started to give me one of the most powerful tools that I have until today, which is the despacho. He consecrated me a hill. He gave me his memory. He gave me very beautiful assurances. These potatoes, like the seed of potato, more than 5,000 year old. Like, eat this potato. This is a potato that has more than 5,000 years. And not a single chemical has touched it. Nothing has touched it. It's intact. It's alive. Eating that potato for me was worth every insult, every punch. You know. So what I'm going to is that we must stand strong in humility and to dare to understand the elders, dare to understand that indigenous people have gone through very hard, very complex situations, a lot of blood, a lot of death, a lot of pain, and we must understand them. And that's why they can be very difficult, and especially in the north, very hard, very angry, very strong. But behind there is a knowledge of the territory that is awaiting us. They clean us through their bullying. They clean us through bullying. They clean so that we may find in humility another ear, another way of listening. On one side. On the other side are the tools of knowledge. And the elders say that no memory has been lost. All the memory is in the rivers, is in the stones, is in the mountains. And the tools of knowledge, which we call now popularly as medicines, are tools that are there for us to help us listen. We must be patient. Oh, you think that I'm gonna drink this wachuma and I'll be 3 hours on the stone? It's hard. Very rarely in 3 hours you're gonna get it. Minimum 12 hours, maybe a day, 24 hours. Ideally, about 4 days you should be there. Just listening. And slowly they arrive, and you recognize them beyond the word. You feel the stories. You start to breathe them. You start to see them. It has happened to me that I see stories in my chuma, and then the elders will tell me the story. But I'm like, where did I get that story? The medicine, it was there. We must learn to believe. Important what we said before, to do it in family, to do it with a guide, that they my companies that they can help us, that can help us not get dizzy in our own vision, but allow us to weave a story properly, a real story. For a real story to be, it has to have color and sound and smell and taste. It's something that we live. So there we listen to the story. In research, we must research, in books, in studios, in thesis, in universities. And maybe it's 100, 200, 300 page book with nothing in it, and then there's a half a page with a key story. Maybe even the academy didn't give it value. Oh, and then at this point, this man told this story, and they never speak of this again. But you find it, and here was this story. I had to read 300 pages just so I could find this paragraph. So dare to research, to see, look in the territory, to search in the folklore, understand that all of that is there, and we start to recover all these memories. We start to nourish ourselves and opening the path so that the elders may arrive, the ones that know how to listen. The mammals of the sierra, their specialty is to listen to territory, and there is mammals that don't speak a lot. But then there comes one that is mambiador, and he speaks a lot. So they will go into him. And mambiador starts to translate what the mammal is saying. I put it as an example, like to make encounters of elders, it helps a lot. And it doesn't have to be big, like 20, no, just two or three. It allows us to bring nourishment. And then there comes a whole thing of paying for those stories. Ideally, like the three materials to pay for that, well, four really, which are semen, menstrual blood, placenta. Are those are the three main ones. And then it's the water of the mothers, which is a like a material that is not known so much, or female ejaculation. That is also very valuable and very difficult to obtain. But those materials are materials with which we pay to the stones, which are given to the stones. What I'm saying is that don't go and just put it there anywhere and that's paying. No, there's a whole work around that for that material to have strength, so that material has valuable information. It's not just like burying the blood, and there's a work around that to know what is written in that blood, what is written in that semen, what is written in that placenta. All of those materials pay, and when we do those works, things start to arrive in one way or another. Be it in a chuma or in a dream, or maybe an old man or woman appears and oh, and he tells you, when I was young, my elders they told me this story. It can be just a man, just any man, reading a book, or you're in internet and all of a sudden a page appears where someone wrote a story. We pay and territory responds in one way or another, so it is vital. How do we recover these stories of each territory? We have to pay, to give, to make offerings, to give gold, to give silver, to take minerals and return them to their place. It is under the earth. Return them there. It starts to create an energy flow that allows us to create a relation, a conversation with the territory that can share with us the wisdom, a word that will help us to be stronger, to be clearer, more realized personally and as a nation. We know that we're living in a very crazy time, and and this is becoming a necessity more than once. It's becoming a necessity.
Thank you, Alejo. So we will close with that. Um, I will share one of the projects of the Imago community. We are working with Alejo to renovate and expand the temple at their place. Through the thread of Awakening Through Alliance, we offer this opportunity for people who want to also invest or learn more about the community. And we have an upcoming event at the STOA called Abolition in the State of Creativity. And I'll tag in Emil to say a couple words about that.
Hi, can you hear me? Yeah, so hello, my name is Emil DeWeaver, and I'm glad to be here and happy to tell you about next week. We are going to be in Jodo, we're going to be talking about creativity as a state and how that can be, in essence, like our salvation, and how it can also be our prison, depending on how we approach it and how introducing what I call abolitionist principles to the state of creativity can guide us to like succeeding and like creating the world we want to live in. So if you're interested in that, if you're interested in finding out more about criminal justice or the criminal legal system, I'll be there to talk about it and answer questions. And I hope that I'll see many of you there.
Thanks, Emil. And I also felt like I transitioned a little quickly. Alejo, I just want to say deep thanks for coming here and connecting with this community that has been so special to me over the last few years. So I really appreciate your presence here. And if you're interested in more philosophy weavings and weavings of all sorts, you can check out thestoa.ca for upcoming events there. There's a wisdom gym and embodiment hour and all different kinds of things to find there. Okay, so that's the end of our session. Thanks everyone for coming and hope to see you soon.
Muchísimas gracias a todos. Qué bueno poder compartir un ratito y espero que pronto nos veamos.
Thank you very much for everyone, and I hope that we can meet again soon.